Okay, people, so now it's what? April 26, 2020, right? What I got here is a sack of potatoes. Can you see? It came from the farms. I had it delivered yesterday. 50 pounds for $35. That included delivery. And so that works out to about 70 cents a pound. Right? And what I'm going to do, even though I'm not very prepared, right? I can't find my other big dehydrator. It's around here somewhere. My other one was no good because, you know, I've been doing this stuff for years, right? Now I got this little one here, which is okay. And then I got another little one downstairs in my other food storage. Plus I've got this convection oven over here that can dehydrate, so I might try that. And then I'm just wondering if there's like a string that you can pull here to, I don't know how to open this bag. I like this the burlap, right? This is what you call burlap. Hold on a minute. What are we doing? So anyway, what this video is all about, for now anyway, is to encourage people to build on that food security in their home, because these politicians, I don't know, people, they're up to something. Okay, you know, we got people starting to protest, right? Started in the United States, and we've got a few now in Canada starting. And of course we've got these power-mongering politicians calling the protesters selfish for wanting to, you know, get back to work and building on their lives. You know, making sure that their children have a sense of normality in this fucked up world that we live in. Right? You know what I'm saying? You know, nobody wants to have kids where some dickhead, male or female, lays claim to that baby and tries to, you know, lay down restrictions where that child has absolutely no future other than what the dictators are dictating for that child for the rest of their life, people. And that is so wrong. Because you will definitely have children born for the purpose to have their organs harvested. And the more that these power mongers entrench themselves, you're going to have these children hooked up to fucking machines, having their life sucked out of them as they're being used for nefarious reasons. That's just one example. Okay? These people didn't care about us before, people. They're not going to care about us now. So, we're not stupid. We know that they've been spending, what, billions and billions and billions of dollars, giving it over here, giving it to the students over there, giving it to the, what is it called, businesses over there, even though lots of businesses aren't getting any help, right? They're giving it to, like I got, you know, extra GST money for what? Right? Don't get me wrong. I guess I appreciate it. Money is money, but, you know, for what? For what, people? for them to starve me out of my house next year. They gave me money this year to starve me out of my house next year, basically. Because we know that after $1 trillion, because it's a billion here, billion over there, billion, when these governments are already working in deficits, that was the whole premise of the BC Liberals back in 2000, 2001. You know, they were going to balance the budget, right? Reduce the deficit, the provincial deficit, with their 5 great goals. And basically what they did is they attacked the poorest of the poor. I'm the perfect example of that. 5 dependent children, people. They brought in legislation from the United States with the welfare reform. And then they tweaked it. And then they used my family as an example to cut me off of welfare illegally 9 months before the legislation even came into effect. And I can prove that, people. And then when they brought in the legislation and started wiping out a whole bunch of people and pushed them into dire poverty and out into the streets, it was actually the social service department, right? Those workers within that department, I can't remember, the Ministry of something, right? They started to push back on the government because they were the frontline workers to all these people as their lives were like falling apart, and they didn't qualify for anything because of this legislation that they brought in from the States under welfare reform, right? As they were boosting up and promoting the 2010 Winter Olympic Games, right? So they had to find money for the Winter Olympic Games, so that's what they did. They attacked the poor, and they cut off tens of thousands of people off of welfare. And then the frontline workers within that, ministry where, social assistance is delivered out to the public, they pushed back. They lobbied the government, right? Said it was morally wrong. And then the government reversed, they redacted, right, those legislations. And not all of them, but some of them, right, to ease up the draconian laws that they were bringing in to injure and harm people permanently for life. And then after that, they were doing this and doing that. And, if you got child support, they take dollar for dollar, right? They kept you in fucking dire poverty. That's what they did. Right? And then after 16 years, they finally got voted out. So now we've got the NDP to the rescue. Right? To the rescue. And what do you call it? Don't get me wrong. They had it rough because a lot of damage had been done under the BC Liberal government as they brought in cartels right into our government agencies themselves, wrote legislation in where no government employee or ministry, for that matter, could be held liable for the injuries and the harms that they were causing on tens of thousands of people. Some not so much, some really, really, really bad, right? So NDP came in, and they're trying to now, since they've been trying to reverse some of that damage. A lot of it is just a Band-Aid solution in terms of, okay, they gave people an extra $100 a month on their welfare check, right? But as soon as landlords hear that, as soon as landlords get a hold of that information, they will come to your house and they will tell you they want more money in rent. So any money that the government gives the people through a welfare check, in terms of that $100, right, it goes straight to the landlords, because the landlords immediately raise the rent. So, it doesn't solve the problem, because not only are they taking that $100, but they're also price gouging the rents to the point where they're not even affordable, because somewhere through some government agency in partnership with the federal government, right? Prime Minister Trudeau, right? They are bringing in massive numbers of foreign students from China, India, places like that, where they pay twice as much, either or, they pay more to go to school out here than what the students out here pay for. Plus, they're willing to pay for more rent as they stack and pack them into these bungalows, 10 to 12 per person, like 10 to 12 persons per house, at $400 or $500 each. You do the math, people, in terms of what's being paid out in rent. And the landlords, they know this. They're building houses out here, and as fast as they're building them, within a year, they sell them, because that's how they make their money. This little house, well, it wasn't a little house, but this house over here that they just built a year ago is up for sale now. The little house that I had, that's not so little anymore, with a big ass monster house on it, you can almost guarantee that house will be up for sale in a year from now, as the owner of that house starts the process all over again in another little house that he buys, runs it to the ground, kicks everybody out, right? But says, I did a good thing though, because I housed 200 people that were homeless for 9 months or whatever it is. So that's my charity, even though those 200 people and more are still homeless, right? Being targeted as they're being released out of jail. We know that because we've seen that with Ciera, right? Their organs are being harvested as the coroner and the cops are covering it up. So is the hospitals, because the legislation has made it so that they can do whatever they want and never be held accountable, right? Now, is the NDP going to fix that problem? I don't know, people, because that problem was brought in under the BC Liberal government. And that's why I say the BC Liberal government brought in cartels that have partnered up with the private sector, right? The private sector. Okay? So anyway, that little house over there, within a year or so, will be up for sale, just like that one was built a year ago is now up for sale, right? As we've got other people in the community that are networking with China, networking with India, to bring in all these students that are going to pay more money to live here as we get forced out, right? Unless I'm wanting to put 12 people in my house to pay $4,000 a month for this place, sooner or later, you know, the clock is ticking. It's just a matter of time before I lose this house. And the minute I lose this house, you're going to either get 12 guys moving in that go to school from fucking China or India or wherever, right? Or you're going to get a family moving in here, self-quarantining themselves for 14 days after they got off the airplane from India. Or China. The thing is, the Chinese, they tend to buy their houses and they like to keep them empty. Right? There's a house just up on 132A. Always up for sale. You know? And then they take down the sign. Then they sell it again. Then they take... That house is empty. It's been sitting empty for over a year, people. Because it's money laundering schemes. And the provincial government allows it to happen. That's what's happening. right? So for all this free money, and even then, a lot of this free money it's like loans, right? The government is loaning you money. They're forcing you to borrow money off of them with their rules that if you don't meet those rules, you will be obligated to pay back that money even if your business goes bankrupt through the process. As you've got these power-mongering governors and premiers and mayors making you fucking feel guilty, right? Because you're supposedly putting all these people at risk for wanting to live a normal life and not be dictated to by some asshole that shits out fucking flowers and thinks their shit don't stink. As to one thing I don't get about these politicians, for some reason, they seem to think that they're above everybody else. You know? Like, just because they've managed to get themselves into a position of power. So anyway, we know that they're not our friends. We know that they're harvesting us and they're lying to us. We know that they're selling us out to other countries to remove us from our own country so that they can make a profit off of the people that are immigrating into this country, right? Selling them some song and dance that they will be safe as long as they play by the politicians' rules. In other words, don't stand up and fight back against illegal organ harvesting. Just participate in it. And if you participate in it, you get a free fucking pass, right? If you stay quiet, more of you will be allowed to come to Canada, right? Because the gene pool to pick off, you know, the ShaMays and the Ciera is that well that they drink from is still quite full. So any immigrants that are coming to Canada at this point really don't have to worry too much about being targeted, because they're not the group being targeted outside of they can pay more money to come here. They're being targeted for their money to pay more to come here, right? To find peace and liberty and to be free. Even though you can't go outside, you're not allowed to socialize anymore, right? You know, you got to accept the fact that sooner or later, the deficit in the government is going to be so big that, you know, anything that they've been giving you, they're going to want it back. And if they don't get it back one way, they're going to get it back in a different way. And it's just a matter of time before they start starving you out, because they've been starving us out a long time already with the cost of inflation, with food going up and up, with rents and mortgages and hydros and, you know, car insurance and the whole 9 fucking yards going up and up and up and up. As incomes either stay the same, they're stagnant, they haven't moved in 25 years, or they're dropping. And if that's not happening, people aren't getting full-time work, right? Because companies don't want to pay for the benefit packages. That's what was happening with ShaMay at McDonald's. She worked at McDonald's for what, a year and a half, or whatever the hell it was, right? They signed her up with this, you know, because she was working full-time, everything. They put her on, you know, dental and this and that, and then they started cutting back her hours, people. Same thing with Tisha. They just started cutting back their hours, so it kicked out anything that they had given them in terms of company benefits because they weren't working enough hours. And that was coming in from the management office within the fucking McDonald's itself. because they didn't want to pay. Right? So there you go. Even though my kids were working in an environment serving 1,000 homeless people every day, with those homeless people injecting and having sex and spreading shit all over around in the fucking bathrooms because of some of their mental illnesses, some of those people that had. So, you know, ShaMay ended up stop working there because, you know, they just cut back on her hours. Because they did, you know, she worked there long enough so that she could get the benefits, and once the benefits kicked in, that's when they started cutting back the fucking hours. Because the company was being shady. Well, that's what's going to happen with the government. They just want you quiet right now. As they pit one against the other. As they continue to bring in mass numbers of immigrants that are willing to pay over and above what is normal just to come to this country. Think about that. Look at these potatoes. It's huge. Huge potatoes. These potatoes are huge. The only thing is I'm kind of unorganized. Right? I have to find my I would prefer my other big dehydrator. I might even go buy a new one. Right? Because the one I have is very old. And I like the big ones. Those ones work nice. And then my what is it called? You know, the machine that I don't know where the parts are for it. I lost them. I have one, what is it called? Food processor, right? I have one that's in there that I've had ever since Brooks has been a baby. And Brooks is like 34 years old or something. 34, 35. He's 35. So I've had this thing for 35 years. It's kind of broken, but it still works. But I have to get into another cupboard way over there and move things around. So I'm debating whether I should do that. I don't think I'm going to rush with it because this is a big bag of potatoes. So I think to start, I might just do by hand for now. You know, I'm not going to stress out about things. Or maybe I might try this. I've got 2 different kinds here anyway. I've got more of these around, but I don't know. So I think maybe what I'll do is just start by hand, because what you do is you peel them and then you blanch them. You know, you peel them, you cut them, you shred them, however you want them, and then you blanch them for what, a minute or something like that? Just Google it online. And then you just rinse them off quickly. And then you dehydrate them. And they last forever, people. Because the cost of food, I'm telling you, it's going to go up. In a year from now, look at that. In a year from now, right? It's going to be extremely hard to feed your family if you're not rich or running scams and laundering money. Basically, putting 12 guys in a house to displace the Canadian-born people just so that those owners can get rich and build a house to push out another 200 people, 250 people out onto the streets so that they can sell that house a year later to somebody else that comes in from a different fucking country to start the process over again. Over and over and over and over again. That's what's happening, people. As our politicians are conquering and dividing us by feeding into prejudices, bigotries, racism, fears, giving people a reason to have those types of traits, right? Oh, I don't want to talk to you. You might give me the coronavirus. Fuck off, right? But here, let me just milk you for every penny that I can get out of you, because sooner or later you will die and I will live. And that's pretty much what it is, people. And this conquered and divide is masking it over, so that that underground economy, whether it's bringing in tens of thousands of immigrants in every fucking month, well, maybe not that much, but maybe 5,000 throughout the province, 10,000 every month, 1 million people a year, who fucking knows? Because they're not telling us. All we know is go look for a place to rent and you're not going to find anything, okay? Because they're not being rented to the Canadian people. Instead, we're being hunted. That's what we're being. We're being hunted. Okay? Okay, so I'm just going to end it on this because, you know, day 3, I still have a headache. I'm pretty sure it has something to do with my eyes. So as you can see, this is what I've done before in the past, long time ago. Perfectly fine, people. Okay? Trust me, you need to build in food security into your house. These are little things that you can do. Okay? You don't have to get a big bag of potatoes from the farms, right? But you can buy a few extra potatoes and you can dehydrate and you can save it for yourself, right? Because sooner or later, the government is going to cut back on shit. I seen it with the BC Liberal government. They practically destroyed my family. Right? Uncle John got medically kidnapped. Andre was illegally, wrongfully apprehended. You know, Ciera's life was completely destroyed. What happened to ShaMay is a direct result from the cartel that was imported under the BC Liberal government. Again, I don't know what the NDP wants to do about it, because these politicians, you know, they pass the buck, right? They pass the buck. You know, they'll tell you one thing and they'll do something else. So whether the NDP actually tries to clean the swamp remains to be seen, right? But just as much as they're giving people right now, sooner or later they're going to claw back. Okay, if it means bringing in another party with the elections, when the elections come in, because that's how they do it, that's what they'll do. And then your life will be 10 times harder. Unless, of course, you yourself launder money and commit crimes. Right? In terms of prospering. Right? Or if you stay quiet and hope that nobody notices you, as you are well aware to the carnage around you in terms of the criminal activity, but you know, you just condone it. You don't fight against it. You just condone it, right? Which makes you equal to, under the Criminal Code of Canada, an accessory to that fact.